And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
First of all, a little disclaimer, because I've been asked repeatedly over the course of the past couple of weeks, how do you produce the best 60 seconds of your week? Do you read off of a teleprompter? No. As I've said many times in the past, if I did, it would be a whole lot better. This truly is unedited, unscripted, unrehearsed. It's totally extemporaneous. I just sit here and I talk with each of you on Saturday morning. So if you get a chance, like it, subscribe to it, share it with your friends. That's what we really would like to do. And this has been a very interesting week. It began since we last spoke with the space launch, the first time in nearly a decade when a manned flight took off from the US of A. And we saw our astronauts hooking up to the International Space Station and all sorts of amazing things on the first commercial flight, SpaceX, Elon Musk's outfit, to do so. Really remarkable. And of course, NASA's now telling us that there's an asteroid the size of the Empire State Building heading somewhere towards Earth, about 2 million miles away, so don't lose too much sleep over it. But lots of things coming to us from interstellar space these days. And they keep telling us that there may be an alternative universe, but in some ways, aren't we seeing that here at home? I mean, we have had a week of really interesting experiences with the tragedy involving George Floyd. And I mean, look, there's nobody in this country that's going to defend the police at Minneapolis for what they did with George Floyd. You can't get the American people to agree on anything, and 99.9% of the American people are together on this. But where there's a deep divide is on the reaction to it. Again, I don't know of anybody that doesn't believe that there should be peaceful protests if that's what folks want to do. But when it devolves quickly into rioting, looting, burning, vandalism, etc., there needs to be as bright a line as there possibly can be. There has to be zero tolerance for that kind of stuff. And yet, so many on the left not only condone it, but tacitly support it and encourage it. And let's look at what happened with social distancing and wearing masks, etc. I mean, here in my home state, just a couple of weeks ago, folks on the left were screaming blue bloody murder when people showed up to rally for reopening the economy so that they could feed their families. And what did they say? Oh, there's going to be a spike in the pandemic of the Wuhan flu. These people don't care. They're selfish. They're cowards, our governor said, because they're not wearing masks and not socially distancing. But then, just this past week in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania, governors saying, oh, well, you know, if you want to have a protest over George Floyd, you can crowdsource and you can be tightly compacted and you don't really need to wear masks. And there's the governor of Pennsylvania traipsing down the street with these folks who aren't wearing masks, who are all locked arm in arm and carrying signs saying, Blue Lives Matter. You've really got to wonder where all this is going. And in addition to the blatant hypocrisy we saw from the left, we also saw the ludicrous, I mean absolutely ludicrous policy initiatives some of them want to promote, including defunding and actually getting rid of police departments. Think about it. Just think about it. And you need to go no further. And of course, this week we observed the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. If you want to see what oppressive governments do, take a look no further. And the Chinese continue to be repressive. They continue to lie. They continue to steal intellectual property. They continue to repress their people. And the spillover is beginning to have its effect on the world markets. But here at home, good news economically this week. The jobs report, which was supposed to suggest that there was an increased decline in employment, said 2.5 million new jobs created in the month of May. Unemployment down to 13%, and yet 13% is ridiculously high. It can't be tolerated, but why do we have that? We went from record low unemployment to record high unemployment because of the lockdowns and the shutdown of the U.S. economy, a multi-trillion-dollar enterprise that basically was brought to a standstill. Now we're beginning to get things back on track, and let's all pray that we get the Trump economy before too long, because the productive engines of a free society are what make a better quality of life for everybody. And reflecting that economic good news and the future outlook, were the markets this week. 5 continued days of bullish activity and a bright future on the horizon. The Dow hitting 27,000 by week's end, and the NASDAQ at an all-time high and flirting with 10,000. All 3 major indicators up over 40% since the mid-March lows, and economic confidence once again. Let's just hope that our economy can open up, that the markets can really take off. And as we know, the markets aren't the economy, and the economy isn't the market, but they are certainly a good indicator. And with every day in June thus far being on the upside, it's all positive news. This week, 7 states and the District of Columbia held their primaries. I live in Pennsylvania, and it was very interesting to look at what happened at our primary here. Now, you have to understand the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has roughly 750,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans, so you expect a lot more Democrats to be at the polls on Election Day. Furthermore, the Democrats had the only contested statewide election, a race for Auditor General here because the seat is now open. The Republicans had no opposition in their primary for Auditor General, again an indication that Democrats would show up in big numbers. And finally, Pennsylvania had for the first time an easy-to-access mail-in ballot program. And Democrats had availed themselves, taking roughly 2-to-1 advantage over Republicans in mail-in ballots before Election Day. But guess what happened on Election Day? Republicans showed up at the polls in droves. President Trump outpolled Joe Biden by over 100,000 votes. He only won the state by 44,000 against Hillary Clinton. Outpolled Joe Biden by over 100,000 votes. And down ballot, Republicans were doing the same thing. A candidate for state treasurer who hasn't yet had the opportunity to establish herself statewide outpolled the incumbent state treasurer, a Democrat, here in our Commonwealth. How do you possibly explain that, other than to say that there is real intensity in the Republican base vote, the Trump vote, and it doesn't exist as much anyway on the Democratic side, where we've heard from the media for months that the Democratic base is enthused, highly organized, etc. There is simply no other way to explain the primaries of this week because the facts don't lie. And finally, this week we observe 2 very important occasions in American history. First, the passing of President Ronald Reagan, one of the country's truly great presidents, and a man for whom I was privileged to work for many, many years. And today, D-Day. You know, if you have the opportunity to know somebody who actually served at Normandy, please take the extra effort to go say thank you to them, to maybe even hear their stories, and to put your arm around them and let them know that the nation and the world still really appreciate what they did. The greatest generation is very slowly leaving us, and our opportunity to say thank you is fleeting. So if you have that chance, please take it. And I'd like to close with this, the words of the American commander at Omaha Beach on that fateful day, a man by the name of Major General L.T. Giroux, yes, one of my kin, who told his troops as they departed for that fateful mission at Normandy, "You have been selected by the Supreme Allied Commander to perform the most important military operation in the history of the world. Your task will be to destroy the Nazi defenders of the gate to Western Europe and to lead our victorious forces on to Berlin. The way has been magnificently prepared for you. The Hun has been driven from the sea, annihilated by the Russians, kicked out of Africa, bombed from the air, and is now nervously and hopelessly awaiting for you to deliver the final knockout blow. You are well prepared to do this job. No troops have ever entered battle better trained or more magnificently equipped. Supporting us will be the tremendous resources of the Allied naval and air forces. Our success is assured. With your victory will come the eternal gratitude of freedom-loving nations the world over. I have implicit confidence in your professional ability, your steadfast courage, and your unbridled determination. Hit hard and keep going forward. We fight on God's side and cannot fail." And on D-Day, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.